Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? Good, good. If you don't know me, my name is Elliot. I'm the associate minister here at the Cove, and I'm really glad that you're here, whether you're with us in the room or whether you're joining us online right now via YouTube or Facebook or podcast, whenever you're joining us. Thank you for being here as we continue to unpack our series called The Kingdom. Now, Abby and I are big fans of Dave Ramsey. You know who Dave Ramsey is? You know who I'm talking about, right? He's that crazy bald guy with the giant scissors chasing people around trying to cut up their credit cards. Yeah, and he's yelling at them saying, debt is dumb, cash is king, live like no one else so later you can live and give like no one else. We love Dave Ramsey. We do Financial Peace here at the church, and it completely changed Abby and I's lives as well. And so I listened to the radio show, and almost every day they have this segment, and they have people call in and they talk about how they paid off all this money. Have you seen this? They create all this money in like 18 months. And so they tell this inspirational story, and then at the end, they always yell, "We're debt-free!" And Braveheart music is playing in the background, and I'm crying and punching my steering wheel because I want to be there. I want to get to that moment because I knew if I get here, then life is going to click into place, and it's just going to take off, right? It's going to be incredible. So we sacrificed, and we didn't go on vacation, and we didn't go to lunch. We were like doing all this stuff, and a couple of months ago, we made it. We got past baby step 2 to baby step 3. We're like, this is going to be amazing. You have no idea how excited I was to send the last payment to Sally Mae and say, get out of my life forever. Goodbye. Okay, I was so excited. But you know what I found out? It was Tuesday. There were no fireworks. There wasn't a dove from on high, not even a rainbow. Like, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but it was Tuesday. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad that we did it. And I love not having any payments except for my house. That's amazing. I highly recommend it. But it didn't really bring that satisfaction that I thought that it would, because of all of the blood and sweat and tears and patching of drywalls that went into that moment. You know, I thought that it was going to be a lot bigger than that, and it was Tuesday. And have you ever been there before? Where you worked so hard to get something that you just knew was going to change everything, and it was good, but it just didn't quite get you where you thought it would get. Of course, we have. Maybe for you, it wasn't getting out of debt. Maybe for you, it was the car, right? It's getting the car because you knew once you got. I don't know what it is for you, whether it's the Vet or the Tesla or somewhere in between. And you just knew if you get that, and then you're driving down A1A through Ponte Vedra, that life is going to be good. Or maybe it's not the car, maybe it's the house. You get the dream house, and you're going to live happily ever after, right? Or it's the 401k, right? Because once you get $1 million in the 401k, then you are somebody. No, that's probably not it. Maybe, but you know what it is? It's the boat, though, right? If once you get the boat, then people have to start calling you captain, and you join the ranks of Sparrow and Crunch, then life will be amazing. Anybody else feel like we're just running in circles? Because what we do is we set these goals, and then we work really, really hard, and then we achieve them, and then what we find out is they didn't satisfy us like we thought they would, so what do? We set another goal, and we work really, really hard, and then we achieve it, and then we find out that it doesn't bring the satisfaction. And we do this over and over again until we die. And it's frustrating, isn't it? And it gets a little bit freaky because I know that I'm not old, but I'm older than I used to be. And the more that I do this loop, the more frantic I get. Because, well, that didn't work. What if this doesn't work? And what if that doesn't work? And what happens if I get to the end and I never find it? See, the scary thing is we spend our lives chasing things that don't matter and then wonder why it feels like we wasted them. We spend our lives chasing things that don't matter and then wonder why it feels like we've wasted our lives. Now, to be fair, there's an entire market that is dedicated to make you feel unsatisfied. Not that you aren't responsible for your personal decisions, but that's what the marketing industry is for, right? To make you feel discontented with what you have. And if you just buy this, then you're going to get that meaning and that satisfaction and that purpose that you've been looking for. But you don't buy that, do you? I mean, let me ask you a question. If the stuff, if money, if position, if power could bring the satisfaction, the meaning, the purpose that we're talking about, if that was true, then why is the suicide rate among the rich so high? Because it wouldn't be if that was true, right? Maybe you, like me, have started to question this whole cycle that we find ourselves in. Maybe you've started to wonder if perhaps Solomon had it right when he said this in Ecclesiastes 5:10. He said, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. Now, you probably didn't need Solomon to tell you that. You definitely didn't need me to tell you that, because you've been living in our culture long enough to know that chasing the dollar is like chasing your tail, isn't it? It's like running on a treadmill. You're out of breath and you're sweaty, but you went exactly nowhere. And you're going, there has to be a better way. There has to be something else that I can do that can bring this thing that I'm looking for, this satisfaction, this meaning, this purpose that everybody's seeking after. Why is nobody seemingly able to get it? There's got to be something different. What if I told you there was? What if I told you that it had nothing to do with your economic status either, but it's already right there within your grasp, but it's going to require a shift in focus, a shift in priorities. It's going to require to start chasing something different, to start running in a different direction. What if I told you Jesus talked about this exact thing in the Sermon on the Mount? Did you know? I don't want you to take my word for it. Listen to what Jesus has to say. In Matthew 6, he says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus is telling them, stop chasing the wrong thing. Stop chasing the wrong thing. Now, in Jesus' day, clothing was a status symbol. The nicer the clothes, the more important you were. So exactly nothing has changed, okay? So exactly nothing, all right? So, but let me ask you, what happens to that really nice set of clothing, whether it's suit, dress, whatever it is, what happens to it when you stick it in the closet and you leave it there for a long time? What happens to it? It shrinks. I like it. And you pull it out, and you're like, why are there holes? Like, I shouldn't be able to see through it, right? Why are there holes in it? I can stick my finger through it. What happened to it? It got eaten by moths. So that hasn't changed either. It was true in Jesus' day. It's true right now. And you know, the houses in Jesus' day, they were made of these clay bricks that if you really wanted to, you could dig right through them. So how frustrating is it? Because it would happen sometimes. Somebody would just tunnel into your house and take your stuff. How frustrating is it for you to work so hard to get these clothes that just get eaten by bugs, or work so hard to get all this stuff that your neighbor just takes? How frustrating is it? And Jesus said, how's that working for you? But unlike so many people in Jesus' day, and in our day, by the way, who are quick to point out a problem, they don't have a solution, they just want you to be mad with them. That's frustrating, isn't it? But unlike that, Jesus says, no, here's the problem, but I'm going to tell you how to fix it too. He says, stop chasing the wrong thing. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where bugs are going to eat it, people are going to steal it. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Stop chasing the wrong thing. This isn't a new problem for us, by the way. We've been doing this since we got onto the planet. You remember Jacob and Esau? Jacob and Esau, these are Abraham's grandkids, the sons of Isaac. And Esau, he was this big, manly, hairy man's man, driving the 4x4 with the shotgun rack, killing bears with his bare hands. That's Esau. You know what I'm talking about? This is Esau. And his brother, Jacob, he was none of that. He was the complete opposite. But he was really clever. And one day, he tricked his brother in a massive way. And I want to show you what happened in Genesis 25. It says this. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. That's why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, first sell me your birthright. Little brothers, right? Look, I'm about to die. You have this kid, I have this kid. I'm so hungry, I'm going to die. This is Esau. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. Swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank. Then he got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Now, understand this. Esau was given the birthright because he was the first born, not a trick question. Okay? And what this meant was that he was going to get the vast majority of the inheritance when his father passed away. But in addition to all the stuff he was going to get, he was going to be in a position of power as the patriarch of the family. He was going to have all of this stuff given to him, and he sold it for some soup. And if it seems ridiculous, that's because it's ridiculous. Like, we look at this story and we go, how could you be so foolish? How could you give up something so important for something that's going to be gone in the next 20 minutes? And Jesus said, yeah, exactly. That's the question I want to ask you. How could you give up something that can never be taken away from you? And instead chase after stuff that you know is going to be gone in the next 20 minutes. Let me say this another way. Don't chase the temporary at the expense of the eternal. Don't chase the temporary at the expense of the eternal. And Jesus said it this way. He said, don't store up treasure on earth. Store up treasure in heaven. Now, when he used that phrase, treasure in heaven, it might be a little bit confusing for us because it's not a common phrase in our day. Like, we don't use that in day-to-day language. But it was a pretty common phrase at the time when he said it, so the people there knew exactly what he meant. And what he meant was to build up your character. Because they connected this phrase, treasure in heaven, with character. So if you wanted to build up treasure in heaven, you built character on earth. The problem is they weren't doing that. They were building wealth instead of building their character. They were focused on looking the part instead of being the person. Now, we don't have that problem, right? We don't do that. Because we understand that if we'll just be the person, we don't have to worry about looking the part. Because, we would never do stuff like, when people ask us to pray, we'll just send them prayer hand emojis, knowing full well that we're not going to actually pray for, because we don't do that, right? We wouldn't show up to Bible study and just leaf through our Bible real quick, but it's the only time we picked up our Bible this week because we wanted to have the answers when we got to this. We don't do that because we know if we'll just be the person, we don't have to look the part. But Jesus is addressing this problem. He's saying, I want your heart. I want your heart, because Jesus knows that at the end of the day, the question is not going to be, how much stuff did you get? How much money did you have? Did you make the $1 million in the 401k? That's not going to be the question. The question isn't even going to be, how much money did you give to Swiss Cove Christian Church? Was it over or under 100,000 in your lifetime? Because we're going to have a different discussion based on your answer. That's not going to be the question. Jesus knows that the question is going to be, does your heart belong to me? Does your heart belong to me? And so he said, don't store up treasures on earth. Store up treasures in heaven. So in light of that, there's a couple of things we need to remember this morning. The first one is, it's short-sighted to keep your treasures on earth. It's short-sighted to keep your treasures on earth. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying it's bad to have money, because money is amoral. It doesn't care what you do with it. You can do all kinds of great things with money, can't you? The problem is not when you have money. The problem is when money has you. And you can tell because of the way that you treat it. Are you chasing it or are you using it? Don't make the same mistake that Esau made. Don't make the same mistake that so many people in Jesus' day were making. Don't make the same mistake that people all around us every single day are making. Don't sacrifice the eternal for the temporary. Now, whenever we have these kind of discussions, we instantly go into defense and we'll say something like, well, my heart's in the right place. My heart's in the right place. And I want to say this as nicely to you as I can. Is it in the right place? Is it really? Because there's an easy way to tell. Did you know? If your heart's in the right place, here's how you find out. Follow the trail of your time, your money, your energy, and your efforts. Follow that trail. Answer this question: how do I spend my time, my money, my energy, and my efforts? And when you answer those questions, you'll find out what you're chasing. Why does that matter? Because what you chase is what you treasure. What you chase is what you treasure, and your treasure reveals where your heart truly lies. So follow that trail of your time, your money, your energy, and your efforts. You'll find out what you're chasing. What you chase is what you treasure. Your treasure reveals where your heart truly lies. And maybe you don't like the answer to that question because it makes me uncomfortable when I have to look at this, because if I'm honest with myself, sometimes I'm chasing all kinds of things because my heart is wild. It's prone to wonder, isn't it? Just like yours. But here's the thing. Jesus knew that about you, and he knew it about me before he ever showed up. And he came anyway. Why? So that we could have the opportunity, like we talked about last week, to have our sins forgiven, so that we could have the opportunity to be reconciled in our relationship to God, so that we can then have the opportunity to hand him our hearts and say, here, this belongs to you. You made it anyway. And here's the thing. When you hand your heart to Christ, he changes it, doesn't he? It doesn't stay the same anymore. There's a shift that happens when you say, here's my heart, Lord. He changes your perspective. And here's what I know. An eternal perspective will shift your earthly priorities. Have you noticed? An eternal perspective will shift your earthly priorities. I mean, think about it. If you're living for the weekend, it makes sense to pile up as much stuff as you possibly can and blow through it and have as much fun as you can, because you don't know how long you're going to be here, do you? Does that make sense? If, however, you are living life in light of eternity, you make different decisions, don't you? An eternal perspective will shift your earthly priorities. And Jesus told a story in Matthew 13 of a man who understood this. Here's what he said. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again. Then in his joy, went and sold all that he had and bought that field. Can you imagine the looks on the faces of this man's friends and family when he told them about what happened? He said, yeah, I sold it all and bought that field. They said, what do you mean sold it all? He said, I mean, I sold it all. You mean the house? Yeah. You mean the truck? Yeah. Not the boat though, right? No, the boat, all of it is all gone. Are you crazy? Maybe. But I got it. Why would he do that? Because he found what actually mattered. And when you find what actually matters, everything else pales in comparison, doesn't it? And so Jesus said, don't build up treasures on earth, where bugs are going to eat it, people are going to steal it. Instead, chase after and build treasure in heaven that can never be taken away from you. And we said a minute ago, like, okay, what does that mean? Well, building up treasure in heaven is to build the character of Christ on earth. Okay, that's cool, but how do we actually do that? Because that sounds pretty hard. I mean, is there some kind of secret? Well, it's not really a secret. Okay. We talked about this last week too. If you want to build the character of Christ on earth, then follow the greatest commandment. I'm going to break it down for you this way. If you'll love God, if you'll love people, and if you'll serve others, you will build the character of Christ on earth. You live your life through that lens. When I go to work today, how do I love God? How do I love people? How do I serve others? When I go to school today, how do I love God? How do I love people? How do I serve others? When I interact with my family today, how do I love God? How do I love people? How do I serve others? If you'll live your life through this lens, you will build the character of Christ on earth. You will build up treasure in heaven. And incidentally, by the way, you will find that meaning and that purpose and that satisfaction that you were looking for the entire time. And by the way, we're gonna talk about this in just a couple of weeks. Should finish this sermon tomorrow, actually, hopefully. Jesus said, if you will seek the kingdom, if you'll build up treasure on earth and you'll seek the kingdom, I'm going to take care of this stuff anyway. Have you noticed? He said, stop chasing the wrong thing. Chase after treasure in heaven and trust me with this. So let's be people who encourage one another to stay focused on what matters, to build up treasure in heaven that is not going to be eaten by bugs or stolen by people, but to build treasure in heaven that will never spoil, that will never fade, that can never be taken away. And let's trust Jesus with the rest. Let's pray together.